Welcome to another episode of Golden Nuggets, Tips and Tales, powered by Property Finder. This is where we uncover the untold stories behind the region's top real estate professionals. And because there's a great story behind every lead and listing, we're shining a spotlight and going behind the scenes with Property Finder super agents, whose journeys are packed with hard-earned lessons, bold moves, and powerful takeaways you won't forget. Today, I'm joined by Alba, Cavallo, Esclapez, one of Property Finder's super agents at Elite Properties.
Thank you so much for having me today.
We're going to talk about a topic that is probably one of the toughest conversations a real estate agent has to have with a client to price their property. So could you tell us today how you handle the discussion about valuing a property?
I think it's you have to really walk through that fine line between emotional and expertise sometimes. It might be because that was the first property that they purchased, or because they bought it at the time they bought at a specific price. And even though they know the market is not the same, they still tend to compare. It might be because they have pending payments alone, and that's why a pricing makes sense for them more than another.
There's that saying, comparison is the thief of joy.
100%, 100%. I still have clients comparing to COVID prices and the lost wishes of lost investments, if you want to say so.
Yeah.
But they are aware of the new market trends, and you had to be there to remind them what the new market is. It's not what you want, is what the buyer sees, is what the actual transactions are, and that's where the agent has to play their key role to assist them, obviously. Yeah.
So I've done many a training session with agents pricing properties and doing a comparative market analysis. You look at the probably 3 to 6 most recent transactions, as close a match to that subject unit as possible. And then you look at the price that they transacted for, and hopefully you're able to come up with your own value for that property. Now, you can sit 20 agents down with the same subject unit and the same comparable properties, and even with the data, they're going to come up with 15 different variations of price. So what's your strategy when it comes to pricing properties?
I think data is for sure your best ally in this case. You can compare what's listed online, and that's not always a reliable source. Because when you compare what's actually transacted to what you see on the portal, most of the time it doesn't really match the price, right? And those are the expectations some sellers have nowadays.
So they're, rather than using sold data, they're using the listing price data.
Right. Most of the times, obviously, you try to present them with what's been transacted in the community, the price per square foot, same building, similar layout, views, all of these things are what is going to narrow down at the end the final price they're going to offer, right? And yet a lot of the sellers will still think that their unit is still the best in the market, and why should it drop the price of what you're suggesting? But as I said, most people would like to have like proper numbers in front, charts, Excel sheets to explain what's one thing and what's another. Other people will actually see what's been on the market for long, what's been actually transacted quicker. And that's when they actually realize, okay, maybe you're not so wrong. Maybe that is actually not what the market is at the moment. And I'm just trying to speculate on what's going to happen later on.
And Property Finder has a product called Data Guru, which gives you the average price per square foot of a particular community. And then it's down to the agent's knowledge of a particular community. So you're a community specialist yourself. Do you want to tell us about how you work within your community?
Recently, I've been working a lot with buyers more than specific sellers. And that takes you to touch a few different communities. Having said so, I do work a lot around the waterfront side. So the good thing about having Property Finder Data Guru is that you can print reports and actually show them with all numbers on size per square foot, different type of layouts, views, the entire community, not just one side of the community. Palm is so big, you can just check of what's going on the fronts, what's going on the crescent, what's on the entrance of the pump, for
It's all
instance.
different.
It's all completely different. And a lot of clients are not well educated in that sense. They just think because that is the same location, for instance, or should be taken at the same level. And that's when having the availability of using this data and showing the difference to them definitely helps. Also to build your own credibility.
Yeah. And there's that saying, if without data, you're just another person with an opinion. And we can translate that into real estate as well. Without data, you're just another real estate agent with an opinion on what the property is. And there's all sorts of factors that you need to take into account as well. It's not just the price per square foot. It's if there's been any upgrades done. It could even be, whether it's currently rented or not. So what other factors do you think influence the value of the property?
Definitely, as you mentioned, the upgrades. That is usually the fine line between going above market price nowadays, and also who's done the upgrade and how.
Key points. Who's done the upgrade and how good is it?
Exactly. You do find a lot of properties that get just a quick freshen up, as I say. A bit of wrapping paper here, some IKEA furniture, and it's good to go. And just because I've done this, now I want 300k more.
Yeah.
It does not really work that way. But when you walk into the property, you can actually see who has done the finest touches with a property designer, what kind of materials have been used. And that also gives the extra value to the property. The returns on investments as well, 100%. The tenants, you do have a lot of old tenancy contracts still following the pricing from post-COVID.
Right.
And we know all the rules that we have with land department nowadays. It's not that any owner can just increase the price as they please.
Yeah.
That could be a bit tricky sometimes for an investor, because if you're stuck with a low return and you know that market price is a completely different thing and you could get a lot more, it becomes a little bit more tricky to finalize those last numbers. You can use that as an advantage as well to negotiate with the seller, obviously. But it really comes down to a specific case-to-case kind of basis.
So would you put a little bit more value on a property that's vacant on transfer?
100%, yes. It gives you more flexibility to either work with it as an investment, use it yourself, upgrade it in the meantime if you want to, and then re-put it on the market for a higher price. So it gives you a lot more flexibility and definitely adds value, yes.
So would you encourage your sellers to look at the sold prices rather than the prices that they're listed for on Property Finder? Because essentially that is the target price, but it's not necessarily going to be the end price.
I think it has to come to like a midpoint between both. There are a lot of transactions recorded that if you compare to what the actual market is at the moment, they don't make sense. And you question it yourself sometimes as well. Like, how could this property has been sold at this price? Like, it's unheard of, right? There are listings though that sometimes are overpriced because of overpromises of other agents as well. So it's a matter of really educate the client to find that middle point between both, I would say. Definitely don't trust always just what's listed. Do a bit more research or get an expert to definitely help you with it.
And those agents that take the listing on at these peak prices, do you think it's a lack of skill and education from their side? Or do you think it's a fear that they don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation and say, actually, it's probably a little bit overpriced. Let's not waste marketing time trying to achieve that price. What's your thoughts on that?
You have a bit of everything, I would say. I think there are people that like to overpromise and they do believe, oh yeah, I'll do this. Watch me, right? Who hasn't thought that they can do something like that? It's also maybe their own lack of training from their side. They haven't really done their research. They might be new in the market and they are just not really up to date with what's actually happening. But you do have a lot of other agents that just for the sake of having one more listing and have their face on the portal. It's a good or bad thing. Depends, comes down to the trust and what you actually end up performing with that property. If I'm going to see a property overpriced and listed for over 3 months and is the same person listed on several locations, I probably won't contact that person because it's not showing me that there's some serious stock on his side, or that listing might not even be real, in my opinion. So yeah, it's a lot of factors, I think, that some agents just don't really narrow down what's actually important to have their presence online with things.
Yeah, I always used to list how I search, and I'd always use the most recent filter to see what the most recent listings were, you know, the hottest listings, because they're the ones that I feel like, oh, I need to get in quick. So I'd always encourage sellers or landlords, let's go in at the right price, because the most crucial time is the first week of going on the market. That's when all the real activity happens. So I'd much rather have that difficult conversation at the beginning rather than having the uncomfortable conversation 3 weeks later of, oh, Mr. Seller, Mr. Landlord, let's start bringing the price down. So what's your thoughts when it comes to price reduction discussions?
That happens on a daily basis. You try to educate them and let them understand that obviously having your property from the start at a high price and then start bringing it down because it's not going to go anywhere looks also bad on their end as an owner, as a landlord, as a seller. Even though you try as much as you can to let them understand how to work through the listing process and everything, they always say, okay, let's give it a week and see what happens. Yeah. And I tell them, I'm like, you're going to see this week, you're going to get zero interest. I will still message you end of the week, but this is what's going to happen, right? And then after 1 week or 2 weeks, like, you know what, maybe you're right. Yeah. Drop 5K on a rental, or drop 10K, or drop 100K on a sale. And when it stays longer, then you're like, okay, you know what, take it down. Let's do everything from scratch. Let's reset.
But the problem is you don't then reset the listing.
Exactly.
It still appears at the bottom. Exactly. You see 3 weeks old or 1 month old.
I personally try to list what I think will have a genuine attraction and impact. If I have a client coming into market at 500,000 above price market, I automatically say I'm not going to list this for you.
You'll walk away.
Yeah, I'd rather walk away. I'd rather let him try his luck with somebody else. And if not, I'm more than happy to listen to you and come back. And that has happened to me. I had a client, we had an apartment in downtown. That was a couple of years ago. And he wanted to go into market at a very high price. It made no sense. Market now is higher. Right now, probably that price would be more realistic, right? But at that time, it was a 1-bedroom. He wanted 300K above market price, no upgrades, nothing really that would stand out. And I told him, I'm like, there's no point on listing it. And he said, okay, I'll give it to somebody else. Give it to 2 agents. After 3 months, listing expired. Gives me a call. It's like, you know what? You were actually right. I should have trusted you.
That's why I'm a property finder super agent.
Exactly. That's when you're like, that call is when it puts the smile on your face and you're like, I knew it. He was coming back. It was meant to happen. And that's, then we put on the market at the right price. And after 20 days, it was sold. So
sometimes there's an advantage to actually coming in as the second agent, 100%. Second or third agent, or at a later stage once they've exhausted their chances with the higher price.
I think you have to manage expectations also from, not just from seller, but also buyer side. A lot of buyers will go, especially investors, will go on the listing finding the lowest price. And
I do that too.
Exactly, right? So we all do. Let's admit
by
it.
Lowest price, yeah.
You convince yourself that then you can get a property at that price in that community. And most of the times it's actually not the case.
Yeah, and that becomes the baseline for that community. That is the price, yeah.
Yeah. And that's another thing that happens really often. Like I had another client that did the same a couple of years ago and then walked away, came back 3 months later, all stressed, thinking that he was overpaying now. And I was smiling. I was like, I told you at that time, this was your best off, and we ended up buying the property he wanted. He did pay the premium at that point, but ever since, he's worked exclusively with me. I'm his POA because he's not even in the country sometimes. And as I said, it's just not a matter of just educating your sellers, but also your buyers. It comes in both ways. They all have sometimes unrealistic expectations, but definitely use the data, definitely use your common sense and your integrity when you try to negotiate those things with both parties always, for sure.
Brilliant. There you have it. Data and common sense. Hope you enjoyed that episode. We'd love to hear your pricing strategies in the comments. Catch all the other episodes in Tips and Tales. And why not binge the whole season while you're at it.